YT Sports, everybody. Ben Mankiewicz, Christian Lopez, Francis Maxwell, Jason Rubin. NCAA Final Four action gets underway Saturday. Incredible games, really, that every college basketball fan is looking forward to. You have Duke and Michigan State, Kentucky and Wisconsin, 3 number 1 seeds, and Tom Izzo's Michigan State team. It is really an ideal Final Four. And yet, what a lot of people are going to be talking about, and appropriately so, is Indiana's new religious freedom law, and that should always be done in quotes because it's not about religious freedom in any way, shape, or form. It's about the right of people who feel oddly persecuted when they're not persecuted, trying to take some stand and take back an America that is thankfully long gone and is turning back the clock on progress. So, there is some pressure, guys, to move the Final Four out of Indianapolis, but as we tape this, it's Tuesday. People have tickets, hotel reservations. You would be inconveniencing the wrong people, I think. Keith Olbermann suggested that they should move it. I mean, I would love it if they moved it, but I can't quite come down on the NCAA if they don't at this late juncture. But everybody should be talking about it, and thankfully,
it seems you can't move it. Just because, as you just said, it's in 5 days, and that's unfortunately inconveniencing the people who did buy these tickets, and that's just not fair to them. What should be moved? The 2016 Final Four for the women's tournament, the 2021 Super Bowl. Other organizations, including the NCAA, should be coming down harshly and just stripping Indiana of this. Indianapolis of these sports events that are coming around.
And so the NCAA, you know, and again, in light of the fact this is a big deal, and it's, you know, and it does turn it significantly turns the clock back on progress. And Governor of Indiana, Mike Pence, is going to sign this law. You know, and in that sense, when you start talking about people inconvenienced with tickets, but it's just it doesn't matter. I don't really care about that. But that said, then that would end up being the focus. But one thing the NCAA could do, they could do 2 things. Not only can they move the NCAA Women's Final Four, they can move their offices.
Yeah,
they can say,
their offices are there.
Right, they can say, you know what, this is the end of our relationship with Indiana, this Final Four, and that would almost be a bigger stand than a quick knee-jerk reaction and scrambling to try and get the Final Four somewhere else.
And a way to take a word out of, like Jenk, as he likes to say here, the way to make a change if you want to take money out of politics, you take money out of Indiana, because this state has thrived off of sports. Like, you don't need to be an economist to know that when you go back a few years ago, this state was struggling in terms of income, and now they've thrived off of major sports, major franchises there, to the point that now they're developing many more sports teams, and they're developing tournaments like this, and they're applying for the Super Bowl. They're going to be in there, I think, in 2018 or 2021, sorry. And it's just like it's absurd.
To go to Indianapolis?
Yeah. And it's absurd.
Well, it's a lovely city, but it's in February.
The Colts might.
Yeah.
The Colts, they might. Let's get a little background on the law. We have a couple quotes from Washington Post piece. The Indiana House voted 63-31, approved the bill that will likely become law. As I said, Governor Mike Pence said he plans to sign the legislation when it lands on his desk. State Senate version of the bill would prevent the government from substantially burdening a person's exercise of religion unless the government can prove it has a compelling interest doing so in the least restrictive means. That's from Sarah Bailey in the Washington Post. Governor Pence has gone on television and said, hey, look, this was the same as Bill Clinton's law, federal law in 1996. It was wrong then. But also, there's a way to get around it by adding sexual orientation as a protected class in Indiana. Then you would essentially be undermining the whole reason they're doing the law, which is fine, and that would largely solve this problem. A lot of other states have this, but they have sexual orientation protected so that you can't exercise your religious belief and prevent yourself from serving a gay couple. And everybody's talking. No one in the history of the world has talked more about wedding cakes than in discussing this issue. So reaction to this has been, I think, good and swift from
many
players.
larger players and a lot of larger companies such as Apple, Starbucks all released statements saying that they, of course, from a business standpoint, you're supposed to uphold these values that the Americans are supposed to continue to put forward, that you do not discriminate, that you're open to anyone, race, gender. You want to be able to put across that message, and especially in college. Especially a college surrounding where you are supposed to allow kids to come in to sculpt their views in the future and not view someone wrongly for what they believe in or what even if it is religion. I'm so tired of that excuse that it is a religious aspect. There is, in this country, there's radical actions out there, and straight away, so many people will be like, "Oh, that's a Muslim religion." Like, they must. It's down to that religion, right? Because they've acted so irrationally that it must be just because they believe something, and they classify it all in one group. What is the difference in this? You're classifying it under one religion. You're using that religion in Christianity or Catholicism to put forward a view that is so old. Like, you do not want to uphold the same-sex marriage. You do not want to allow people to make their own choices. That you're trying to dictate their lifestyle, and as you can tell, really gets under my skin.
I'm pleased to see that among the organizations condemning Indiana today, NASCAR, which you might not think would be taking a big stand there. NASCAR became the latest sports organization to issue a statement about Governor Mike Pence signing into law the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It takes effect July 1st. NASCAR's Brett Jukas, Senior Vice President, Chief Communications Officer, issued this statement Tuesday. NASCAR, disappointed by the recent legislation passed in Indiana. We will not embrace nor participate in exclusion or intolerance. Committed to diversity and inclusion within our sport, therefore, will continue to welcome all competitors and fans at our events in the state of Indiana, anywhere else we race. Not exactly saying that they're going to pull their races out of Indiana. They race at the Brickyard, but nonetheless, it's a stand, and we like it. Indianapolis Motor Speedway also making a similar stand. But a couple of big-time people related to Indiana. Reggie Miller, of course, from California, but his second career, his adopted home state, as he says in this tweet, Indiana. Reggie Miller, now with TNT, says, I've never been big into politics, very disappointed in my adopted home state and the passing of Senate Bill 101. I've always been about inclusion, no matter your skin color, gender, or sexual preference. We are all the same people, beautiful creatures. Good for Reggie Miller. Jason Collins, also the first openly gay NBA player, saying similar. Is it going to be legal for someone to discriminate against me and others when we come to the Final Four? A totally valid point. Technically, as he addresses that to Mike Pence, the bill doesn't go into effect till July 1st, but nonetheless, the overall point's the same. And then finally, Jason, Pat Haden, right?
Yes. Who's athletic director at USC, correct?
Athletic director at SC.
And so he had some fighting words as well, because he's very proud father of a gay son, which is great to see. In his honor, I will not be attending the CFP, which is the college
football presidents.
Thank you. Committee meeting in Indy this week.
So they were there to discuss. They were going to talk about the playoff. And
what's great is the circulation. You get 3,000 retweets. You get these.
Yeah, and it's just going to go up and up and up. Good for Pat Haden. I don't, the number of times I've come on any show here and said anything even vaguely good about USC there's limits. God bless Pat Haden.
There's another organization that had a similar effect on this type of law and why it can change. Arizona was going to presumably pass a law very similar to this, and the NFL, who we criticize.
Well, I think that when the NFL moved the Super Bowl, threatened to move the Super Bowl out of Arizona, it was for not making Martin Luther King a holiday.
Yeah,
that was part of it. In addition, as this story was saying, and reports started to surface that this law, a law similar to this, was trying to be passed, and they came down quickly, swiftly. No, you don't get a Super Bowl if this law gets passed. And again, like we mentioned before, it's unfair for any person to feel that way, especially sports fans, because we go to these events for entertainment. The Final Four is probably the biggest stage in college sports, at least as of right now it is. And comparing it to the college football playoff, sure, but you're taking away from the fan, you're taking away, and you're making an awkward situation for those who should never have to be in that situation in the first place.
So, I mean, I want to ask you, Christian, I know you're a previous athlete, and you'd be a little bit hopeful if you were thinking that they were going to move this tournament for a statement, right? It would make a huge statement, but it's not going to happen. It's just there's far too many tickets being bought. What would you like to see in terms of the athletes taking a stand? Would you like to see a very similar standpoint than which happened with the Ferguson case, when a lot of people were wearing a lot of shirts, etc.? Would you like to see that similar standpoint?
No, I love this. Like you said, being a former athlete, I wasn't around any gay players, at least that I knew of. Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure it's awesome to see all these players coming out and not being afraid to say that they're gay, what their sexual orientation is, whatnot. And it's great. And me having my sister was an athlete, probably better athlete than I was. I hate saying it, but she's gay as well. Yeah. And like when she came out, she was so proud of it, and it was such a cool thing to see. So it kind of hits home for me. But just the way the world is going, this is becoming more and more acceptable. And like you said, not just for the fans, but for the athletes, man. Just for them to come out and like not be afraid to be a gay athlete, because athletes are thought of to be like these macho guys, these super athletes. But no, I mean, a lot of these guys are sensitive dudes. I mean, that are that are gay, and so what?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make them any different than anybody else.
And to that point, we're talking about, and a point Christian made earlier, these are college kids, which means that in some cases they're a year removed from high school. And we know what sort of having to hide your sexual orientation or the kind of bullying that you can get in school, and we've seen so like the NFL needs to move the Super Bowl, but this is for the NCAA. The NCAA can't be there. You know how many openly gay Division I college basketball players there are? One. Derek Gordon, who spent the year at UMass, is going to transfer for his senior year, play somewhere else. He's a good player. And, so I got news for you. There's more than one.
Right. Yeah, of course. And what this law does is just gives people an excuse, which I hate. It gives them an excuse to be like, no, like technically speaking, you can't sit with us because you are a different background. And to quote like Nelson Mandela, people are not born like hating another person. They're taught to hate someone, right? And this is what I hate because I studied this through college. It's a form of reification. So I feel sorry for the kids in Indiana if this law is actually passed through because they're going to be brought up in a state that has made it okay to discriminate someone else. They're going to be brought up in a state that has passed a law that their parents is going to pass down to them that you don't have to hang out with someone based if they are of a different religion, of different sexual orientation. You don't have to hang out with them, and I despise that because if you're a country that's moving so far forward in this aspect, and a lot of laws have been passed to grant same-sex marriage, it's just a huge step back.
Just like Ben said, it's just regressing this country. We're making such great steps forward, and it's just setting us back.
Yeah. So last thing on this from me, like don't believe the hype. Indiana's calling this a religious freedom bill. You have as much freedom as you've had since 1789 in this country to practice whatever religion you want. You don't want to be friends with gay people. You don't want to go to a gay marriage. You get to, and you get to enjoy every benefit this country has to offer. You don't get to not serve gay people pie. You don't get to not make them a cake. If they ask for two people kissing on the cake, you can say we never do that. There's plenty of things you can do. You got to bake the cake.
Yeah.
You have to bake the cake and you have to sell it to them. That's it. That's all you got to do. And so when they say religious freedom, don't buy it. It's about bigotry and it's about a fake persecution of Christians in this country who aren't being persecuted. It's not happening. It's made up.